introduced to quite a few updates and helpful tools that you can use to actually convert your characters and make brand new scenes. So I kind of wanted to talk about the workflow of taking advantage of the pre-set up prefabs to help you quickly get started on setting up a brand new scene and converting a character using all of these tools. So let's set up a brand new scene. I'm going to first kind of take advantage of my pre-built components. I'm going to open up the main shooter melee scene, and then here is my EMI network manager from my example scene, and it's got the camera in here, aim canvas, the HUD in here. These are kind of like the base components that you would need for any sort of multiplayer game or character. And so the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a brand new scene. So let's say new scene, empty, and let's load it additively, create it. And I'm going to go ahead and let's save this. So I got my testing scene here, and then let's make another brand new scene. Okay, so this is going to be like my main scene. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these. I'm going to copy them over to my main scene, but I want to detach the prefabs because I don't want to modify those in case I mess something up. So I'm going to go to prefab, unpack completely, and I'm going to rename this to there we go. So I got my main scene set up. Let's go ahead and add something to this scene. Alrighty, we got our plane, and if we go to the network manager, we'll see that there's a jump point name, but I want to call it something else. Sure, why not? Let's add a new empty object here. Let's call it jump point, and every jump point is going to be a network spawn point. So let's just go ahead and position this here. Let's position that something like that. And just like that, this is a bare bones minimum working scene here. Okay, so now we got a working scene. Let's set up a new character. So I went ahead and I imported this asset that I own here. And we're going to go ahead and make it multiplayer. And as you can see, there's absolutely nothing on here. This is a base mesh. I'm going to go ahead and unpack this because I don't want to make any changes. So with that selected, I'm going to go to Invector, Shooter, Create Shooter Controller. And obviously this setup can work for the melee or the basic, whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and create it like normal. And normally what you would do is you see these things are kind of way off. You're going to want to adjust it according to your character. I'm going to move on, but you can see that it's added all the vector components, and if I was to click play, it would work. One important note to make here is that every time you do this, it's going to add a game controller. Multiplayer, we don't need that, so go ahead and delete it. So now with this selected, I'm going to right-click, go to EMI, Converting, Copy, and Convert to Multiplayer. So the reason I want to copy it is I want to keep the original because we need to compare with this. So here is my multiplayer version. So if we select it, we see it's all the multiplayer components and everything has been set up in it. So I'm going to just rename this, say multiplayer night. Okay, so now we're not quite done. During the conversion process, not everything is absolutely perfect. There could be some things that were missed, or specifically with UnityEvents, it struggles sometimes to capture everything. So we're going to run a test on it. So we're going to right-click, EMI, Testing, Run Testing Suite Unselected. Okay, and total tested components 93, and then you got to ask what you want it to show. Is this a prefab or is this a scene asset? It's in the scenes, so it says, hey, I found one in the testing scene. And then we'll see right here, it says the item list data spawn item handgun in the V item manager component doesn't use the multiplayer V shooter equipment component. And if I say highlight component, it's going to select this, and it's the multiplayer V item manager. So we're going to select this, go down, and we're going to look at the item list data here. show items. And we're going to scroll down to the handgun, and it's the this component doesn't use this. It's probably talking about the spawn object here. So I'm going to select that, click it, and you'll see that it doesn't use it. So I already know the issue is that you need to actually go and convert all of these to multiplayer to support multiplayer. Using Invector's default item list data is not going to work because they're not multiplayer compatible. So I actually already went ahead and I have inside of this asset a multiplayer V shooter version of their default item list data that I showed you there. So I'm going to go ahead and just swap that out on my character. So with that swapped out, I'm going to go ahead and just rerun those tests. And we'll see a lot of those have gone away. So now it's going to talk about saying, hey, you actually have a HUD nested inside of your character. This is not allowed. Don't do this because the reason it's going to be a problem is all of these characters are dynamically spawned, and every time a new character comes in, they're going to come in with a HUD controller. So that's why if we look at the core here inside of UI, there is a HUD here. So when the owner player gets spawned in, this HUD is automatically associated with that owner player. That's the reason we don't have multiple HUDs. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just delete that from my character. The next thing it says is there's a camera nested inside of my component. And sure enough, there it is. It specifically says there's a nested camera in your object. This could cause camera issues at runtime when this object is spawned. Only inventory-related nested cameras are allowed. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave that in there so you can see what that's going to do. But I'm going to go ahead and say testing, run test again. And then this time it says there's an aim canvas, same situation, it's in the Invector core, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And now this one, it says current health is 0, but fill health on start is ticked. So the reason this is an issue here is we see fill health on start ticked and current health 100 is when networked versions of the characters are spawned in. It's going to try to fill their health, but their health is actually determined by the owner player. And it takes out an additional step by simply putting this here. You'll notice it's actually highlighted as a warning. So it's not necessarily a critical game-breaking bug. It's just something that could be helpful and like an optimization. So we're going to go ahead and just rerun the test here. We'll see some of those errors are gone. Now we're getting into the point where like I talked about, there is Unity events that oftentimes struggle to get copied over. And this is due to how the conversion process happens. It's almost like a chicken and the egg scenario. But luckily, it provided a lot of tools to help you solve this quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this object on my character here. And it says failing event on disable. There's an empty target entry in here. So... and it's specifically for the vMaster window. So vMaster window, if I look at this, on disable, and sure enough, we have a missing object. So there's one of two options we can do here. We can, just delete this and move on. But my guess is it failed to copy over something. And so that's why we actually have our original character here, the unmodified original character. Now I could go to that original character and go all the way down its hierarchy to find this. That's going to be tedious. So I actually provided a tool to help you do that automatically. So I know that on the original character, there's a vMaster window with on disable, and there should be 2 objects here instead of 1. So I'm going to go ahead and right click this, say EMI, pathing, copy path to this game object. So what that does is it stores the path relative to the root object to this here. And since these are the same tree, I can say right click EMI pathing, follow copied path to child game object. And it will highlight it for me, and there it is right there. And if I go to open events, sure enough, it failed to copy one. So I could, again, go back and manually try to copy this over, or I can use my helpful windows and click this little breadcrumb menu say EMI, UnityEvents, copying. It's a single event, and I want to copy all UnityEvents in this single component. So with that copied over, I still have that path saved, so I can go back to the multiplayer version, pathing, followed path, come back to here, UnityEvents, copying, single, and paste. And you'll see that it actually pasted it in terms of the correct object for you. So that saves you a bunch of time. So you could go through all of these and fix all of them. Now, I'm going to show you something else that you can do here. If I right click, say EMI, there's no like UnityEvents here. But if I click on any of the breadcrumb menus on any component, go to EMI, UnityEvents, copying, hierarchy, deep copy all hierarchy. Now, this comes with a slight caveat in that it's going to copy every single Unity event. And then if I go to my, and actually I'm even copying it on the wrong object. I want to copy it from the original in vector converted object. So UnityEvents copy, deep copy all hierarchy. This is going to copy every single Unity event on every single component, even nested components, and save it to my memory. I'm going to come back over to here, and I'm going to paste it. Now, it's going to duplicate events because, like I said, it's going to copy everything. It's going to paste everything. So let's do that. Copy, hierarchy, deep paste. So with that, it's now pasted. And again, there could be some copying issues there, but this run test should catch it. So here, we got some duplicate entries is what it says. So the multiplayer lock-on shooter. So I just know that there's going to be duplicate entries since I've done this before on pretty much every event here, because doing that copy all hierarchy is going to duplicate those entries. So like I said, there's kind of the two options here. We can copy all the hierarchy and then run with it that way, or we can do the individual copy that I showed you before. So with this, there's actually a nice tool to clean this up. I could go into here, open it up, remove it, and do that for each individual entry, but that could be kind of tedious. So I'm going to go to EMI, UnityEvents, and then remove duplicate events. And there it is. It removed the duplicate event for us. And then I'm just going to do that for every single component here, just because I want to just be sure I'm not missing anything. Do this, and let's see if I've missed anything. So looks like there's it failed to copy this one over. It seems like it really struggles to copy that one. So we're just going to do that same thing. We're going to pathing, copy path to this object, EMI, pathing, follow path. We are going to copy this single event. And we are going to paste. There we go. Okay, so I managed to fix all of those nested Unity events. So now we're going to get into some of these other errors that I'm seeing. And it said the multiplayer vManager is set to not damage players. No matter what team settings, the melee attacks will never connect with other players. So it's on the multiplayer melee manager and the multiplayer vKnight, which is that one right here. So we're going to open this up. And we can see the hit damage tags do not include the player tag. So I'm going to go ahead and include the player tag there. And then the other one is the multiplayer vShooter manager. So let's go ahead and open this up. And this one says the weapon IK adjust list is blank. That means you are not going to apply any IK adjustments to this character's weapons. So again, I also have a multiplayer one just for legacy purposes. It's the exact same copy here. I have this just in case Invector decides to update that for whatever reason. Okay, so I got that. Let's go to testing, run tests. And if I don't show my critical, don't show any warnings, and actually only show warnings. So there's no warnings left. Show critical, there's one critical left, and everything else is passing on my character. So to be clear, critical means this is going to break your game. Like, you need to fix this. Warnings are this could have unintended consequences, or it's exactly what you're trying to do. But either way, this is something you should look at and verify that this is what you want to do. So anyway, like I said before, let's show what happens if I don't fix this camera like this suggests, as it is marked critical. Okay, so I'm done with this character, so I'm going to go ahead and save this character. And what I'm going to want to do is I want to make a prefab out of him. So let's go and make him a prefab here. What I would do is I would organize your directories in your project kind of like this, where I would say you got your scenes here. Let's move your scenes in here, and then you got a folder for prefabs. And you'll see that way I'm never touching anything inside of CB Games. I'm never touching anything inside of the third-person controller, and I'm never touching anything inside of Mirror. That way I have everything as a fresh copy. I can go back and I can review these scenes. Let's go ahead and unload that scene. And then I have not actually... so let's remove him from my scene because he's going to be dynamically spawned in. I've not actually added this to my build settings. So let's go ahead and say add open scenes to build settings. And you'll see it's marked as 2 and 3. Remember, my documentation clearly states that the main scene needs to be at 0. Basically, the main scene needs to be before any scene that you dynamically start spawning network identities. So it's easiest if it's at 0, but for more advanced scenarios, you could set it something that's not 0. So I'm actually using Peril Sync here. I already have another Unity editor open here that I'm going to be testing with. So I don't need to worry about that because it's going to be following this structure here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up on my other editor here. Let's make that my active scene and unload that. So now I have my testing main scene as my active scene. Let's do that same thing here. Set active. And actually, one thing I did forget. Let's make sure that my jump point is set right here. Yep, starting jump point. And if you have multiple jump points, so like I could duplicate this multiple times, and if they were all named the exact same thing, and I had multiple jump points, and actually that's not even true. I can name this like jump point 2, I can name this jump point 1, and this one jump point 0. If I wanted to, I could say append a random number. So if we look at this, it says if you want to append a random number to the jump point name when the client connects, so 0 means disable it. So this is the maximum number that you can append to it. So it's either going to be 0, 1, or 2. So I put 2 here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just pointing it out so that you can realize that option is there if you want to have dynamic spawn points. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And you'll see that the shooter controller is set to spawn. I don't want to spawn the shooter controller. So I'm going to go to prefabs. The easiest thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say EMI, add to EMI network manager. And you'll see that that adds it down here to the registered spawnable prefabs. But I want to spawn it. That's the character that I want to spawn. Okay, so just as a quick test, let's go ahead and unload this scene and make sure I didn't forget anything. Now remember, there's that critical warning. So let's see what happens. So let's go ahead and click Start Server and Client and see what happens. You'll see the camera is super wonky. So this is why it's marked as a critical warning. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's go to my character here. It's EMI testing, run test unselected. And let's highlight the offending object. And let's open the prefab. And let's delete it. Huh. You know what? I bet I know exactly what this is. Yep. Okay, so that's a good find. Okay, so let's look at this. So you see how close I am to the ground? That's the issue. So if I just move this up, it's going to prevent my character from spawning into the ground. So if I go ahead and click play, and actually let's do this properly here. Let's unload the scene. Let's click play and start server client. You'll see that I can move around normally. And that's because my character is no longer stuck in the ground. That's just kind of a bug related to how rigid bodies work. It's not necessarily an Invector problem or an EMI problem. It's more of a Unity problem. Okay, so I've got this other guy up here. So let's go ahead and say join. And let's go over here, see if damage works. Yep, it works. Let's see, can I damage you back? Yep. And you'll see that there's no particle effects that are appearing. And, you know, I think particle effects are pretty cool. So let's go ahead and add that. So multiplayer v hit damage particle. And by default, it should auto-populate it with a default damage particle. So now with that, let's go ahead and say apply all. And let's click play and test it out again. So you saw that particle that appeared there. So let's go ahead and hit him. You'll see the particle effects are now working. Okay, so that shows you how to basically set up a bare bones example scene with a jump point. I even explained how you can do multiple jump points and have it randomly choose one. And then how you can convert a character from scratch to Invector, and then to support multiplayer, and then how to use the testing suite in order to verify your character is going to work properly. Hopefully you find this helpful. If so, be sure to leave me a good review on the asset store. Thanks. Bye.